everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. So today I thought I would share with you my entire physical TBR. So in a previous video with my reading goals for 2020, I talked about how I wanted to tackle my full physical TBR. So over the past few days, I reorganized my bookshelves for one, and I also got rid of a bunch more books, even though I already unhauled some earlier. So those ones are going to go into a box for later when I next donate some books. But I did reorganize my bookshelves so that all my TBR is in one kind of central location-ish. So it's all kind of in this shelf over here, which is my skinnier shelf, and then I have a shelf in my third bookcase that has my adult TBR. So this full bookcase over here is my YA TBR, and then I have one shelf for my adult, because obviously I own more YA than adult books. But today I thought I would just go through and read out the titles and show you each one, and if I have anything to comment, I will. I'm just gonna be whipping through them because there's like a ton of books in here. I just wanted to kind of document this in some way for future Jananie to look back and be like, I read that, I read that, I read that. Hopefully. Maybe I'll do like a reaction video to this video later on, maybe at the end of 2020, and see if I actually read most of these books, hopefully. But anyways, let's just get right in. I'm gonna start with the first book over here, which is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. All I know about this one is that it doesn't have a romance. It follows two university kids who are doing like a podcast, I believe, and it's one of those books that's good for people who are kind of finishing school or in school and don't know what they want to do with their lives. The next two books are pretty related, and that is My Lady Jane and My Plain Jane. This is part of like the same series. I think they're companions, and they're written by the same three authors, so Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. I've only read Cynthia Hand out of the three of these, and I'm just so excited to read these in 2020 probably, because they're supposed to be kind of like these crazy comical twists on like history and other books as well. So this one follows the true story of a Lady Jane Grey, and this one is a like crazy comedic retelling of Jane Eyre, which is one of my favorite books as well. So I'm really excited to see how these go, and I've heard some really good things about both of these as well, so I think they're gonna be great. The next two are also related, and that is Layer of Dreams by Libba Bray and Before the Devil Breaks You, also by Libba Bray. This is the second and third book in the Diviners series. I read Diviners earlier this year and really enjoyed it. So this is kind of like a occult, murder mystery, paranormal, historical fantasy set in 1920s New York. Follows a very diverse cast of characters, and some of them have magical powers and things. Really love the first one, so I think the others are gonna be great. The next book I have is Unpregnant by Jenny Hendricks and Ted Kaplan. I'm super interested in this one because it follows the journey of this girl kind of driving to a clinic to get an abortion, and it's following her hour by hour as she goes on this road trip with her friend, I think, and they get into some hijinks along the way, and I'm really interested to see how this is gonna tackle the discussion of abortion. The next book here is The Athena Protocol by Shamim Sarif, which basically follows this girl in this like elite spy task force called Athena, and she's kind of thrown out of Athena, and she's trying to solve the mystery on her own after being thrown out, but she's kind of like this badass spy, and I think it's gonna be pretty interesting. The next book is Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali, who I absolutely loved. I read Love from A to Z by her. This follows a young girl who is sexually harassed or raped, I'm not quite sure, by someone in her community, in the Muslim community, and so it's kind of her dealing with that and her community dealing with that. Heard some really amazing things about this, so very excited about it. The next book is the exact opposite of Okay by Laura Stephen. From what I know, this is about a girl who basically gets slut-shamed after she is caught in a compromising position with the son of a political candidate. So it's kind of her dealing with all of those things, and it's kind of like a feminist book. The next book is Salt of the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I'm super excited to read this. I've had this on my shelf for the longest time. It is a historical fiction book. It follows four perspectives in World War II, I believe. Yeah, winter 1945. That's about all I know. The next book is by Christopher Paolini, and it is The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, Tales from Alagasia, Volume 1, Aragon. So this is a collection of short stories from the world of Aragon or Alagasia, and I absolutely love that series growing up, so I'm really excited to dive into this. It came out at the very end of 2018, and I still haven't gotten to it, but I really just want to go back into this world, and I think it's gonna be awesome. The next book is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. I believe this is kind of a vampire book from Holly Black. That's about all I know. And then I have The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. I believe this is also another fae book by Holly Black. I really love her Cruel Prince like series, so I think I'm gonna love both of these. And then I have Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is the West African inspired fantasy that has just kind of taken the world by stride. The second book came out recently, so I really do want to get to this one very soon. The next book is Spindle by E.K. Johnston. I absolutely loved the first book in this series. This is kind of a companion to that first book. The first book was called 1,000 Nights, and it's such a lyrical and beautifully written book, so I'm really excited to see where it goes in this book. The first book was a retelling of Arabian Nights, or 1,001 Nights, and this one is kind of a take on Sleeping Beauty, I believe. The next book is There Will Come a Darkness by Katie Rose Poole. This is an ARC copy. I don't know a lot about this. I know it follows like a big cast of characters in a fantasy world, I believe, and there's like a prince, a killer, a leader, a gambler, a dying girl, all of that, and I've heard some really good things about it, so I'm interested to see how this would be. The next book is The Tiger at Midnight, which is a fantasy book inspired by Hindu mythology by Swati Tirudala. I had the opportunity to interview this author at BookCon, so I'm really interested to see how this book is, and I'm just excited about the South Asian rep, so I think it's gonna be awesome. The next book is an arc of The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. I've heard some really amazing things about this author. This book is set in Madrid in 1957, and it's another historical fiction book, so I'm really interested to see how this goes. I do really like history. I was a history major in university, so I'm really excited to see how this one is. The next one is an Arc of the Beautiful by Renee Audier. I got this signed at BookCon. I'm really excited about this one. It's a return to vampires in YA. It's set in the 1800s in New Orleans, and I am just really excited to see this take on vampires. The next one is an arc for 2020, and that is Belle Revolt, and it is kind of a Prince and the Pauper type vibe, but with two female leads, and there's magic in this world, and it's also a standalone fantasy. And then I have Don't Read the Comments by Eric Smith. This is a contemporary about a girl who video games and becomes kind of an influencer and supports her family through it, but then she is faced with a lot of online trolls. There's also a bit of a love story in this as well. This comes out at the end of January, so I'm excited about this. And then I have Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nagan. This is the second book in Girls of Paper and Fire series. Asian inspired fantasy with like really interesting magic, and it also has a really beautiful female-female relationship in it. The next book is 1,000 Beginnings and Endings. This is edited by Ellen O and Elsie Chapman. This is a collection of stories from different Asian authors with mythology from their cultures. So obviously I'm here for this representation, but yeah, there are 15 retellings of Asian myths and legends. And then I have Shatter Me by Tara Mafi. This is her debut dystopian series. This is the first book in the series. I loved her A Very Large Expanse of Sea, so I'm excited to see how this is. The next book is Kingdom of Souls by Raina Barron. This is a high fantasy, involves witch doctors. I've heard some really incredible things about it, and I just love this cover as well, so really excited to try this out. The next book here is Homeland by Cory Doctorow. This is the sequel to Little Brother by him, which came out like years and years ago, and I read it when I was a lot younger and I absolutely loved it. So this is the sequel that came out much later, but I'm really interested to see why he decided to continue the series, and I'm excited to see kind of where it goes. The next book is one I've been in the middle of for a while now, but I do want to finish it one day, and that is Invictus by Ryan Groudon. This is kind of a space opera sci-fi with a huge cast of characters that have their own kind of quirks and things. It's a very diverse cast as well, and it involves a lot of time travel. The next book is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. This is a fantasy set in Seoul in South Korea, and it follows a mythical being called the Gumiho, which is like a nine-tailed fox, and she eats the hearts of young men, I believe, to stay alive, and then she encounters this boy that she may or may not fall in love with. I'm very interested to see how this goes. The next one is Slay by Brittany Morris. This features a main character who is like huge on this online gaming platform, but she is faced with a lot of anti-black trolls, and so it's kind of her dealing with that. The next book is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. All I know about this is that it has like different timelines, or like involves time travel, also a lot of magic and like saving magic, that kind of thing, and some thieves as well. The next books are The Dark Days Club and The Dark Days Pact by Alison Goodman, the first and second book in this series. It's like a paranormal series set in like the 1800s and like the Victorian era, and there's like the lord and this lady, and they go like monster hunting, and I'm just very excited about it. And then I have Because You Love to Hate Me. This is an anthology of 13 Tales of Villainy by some of my favorite authors, including some booktubers in there with like their little short prompts, and it was edited by Amory. Next I have Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. Obviously I'm here for anything Leigh Bardugo. I'm not the biggest Wonder Woman fan, but I am really excited to see how this goes, and I think I'll really enjoy it. Next I have Want by Cindy Pon. I have started this before, but I haven't gotten around to finishing it. It is set in like the near/far future in Taipei, and it's a sci-fi that involves kind of climate change as well, and there are the rich and the poor, and the rich have like these suits to protect them from the horrible conditions of Earth, whereas the poor are forced to kind of deal with it. And it's about this boy who kind of is trying to bring the rich down. Next I have Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. This is a high fantasy series by Susan Dennard. I loved her Something Strange and Deadly series, so I'm very interested to see how this goes, and I've heard some really great things about it. Next I have Lady Rogue by Jen Bennett. All I know about this is it involves vampires, I think, and like Dracula, and also involves like some treasure hunting and a like bit of a romance as well, so interested to see how this goes. Next I have Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. I've been meaning to read this for the longest time, set in the far future. According to the back, it is a all-out post-apocalyptic girl buddy road warrior lost princess techno thriller. The next book is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. This is a high fantasy inspired by ancient Arabia, and it involves like a hunter and a prince and a like hate to love romance, I believe. Very excited about this. The next is an arc of Loki, which is already out, Where Mischief Lies by Mackenzie Lee. It's Loki. What else do I need to convince me to read this? Next I have The Rose and the Dagger by Renee Ahdieh. This is the second book in the Wrath and the Dawn series. I think it's a duology. I've had this on my shelf for a really long time. I've been meaning to finish the series, so hopefully I get to it. But if you don't know, the first book was a retelling of 1001 Nights / Arabian Nights. The next book is also a sequel, and that is Rebel Magisters by Shauna Swenson. And it's basically a take on like history where the American Revolution was kind of put off because the British had magic, and like lords and people, high status people have magic, whereas the like lower class don't. And the first book followed like a girl who becomes a governess for this lord and ends up embroiled in spy work and the revolution. Next book is also a sequel and also historical, and that is Exile for Dreamers by Kathleen Baldwin. It's the second book in a series. I read the first one. This is kind of a companion. It follows a different main character, and it's set in 1814. Napoleon has just escaped Elba, and it takes place in this school for unusual girls. Next I have Sky Without Stars by Jessica Brody and Joanne Rendell. This is a sci-fi, I believe. Don't know a lot about it. Got it in a book box. I do want to try it out though because it seems interesting. Next I have Forest of 1,000 Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. All I know is that this is an Asian inspired fantasy, and it's kind of a villain origin story. Next I have Shadow Song by S.J. Jones, which is the sequel to Winter Song by her, which involved this mythology of the Goblin King, and there was like a romance in it, so really interested to see where it goes in this one. Next I have Wicked As You Wish by Rin Chupeco. All I know about this is that it's from the author of the Bone Witch trilogy, and it's about found family, modern day magic, and finding the place you belong. Next I have Reverie by Ryan LaSala. This just came out recently, and it's pitched as Inception meets The Magicians. I know it is queer as well. Next, I have Song of the Crimson Flower by Julie C. Dow, the same author of Force of 1,000 Lanterns. Don't know a lot about this one. It's an arc I got, but I do want to try it out. Next, I have A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. All I know about this is that it's a North African inspired fantasy, and it follows like two queens, I think, rival queens or something. So yeah, very, very interested by this. Next, I have an arc that I'm super excited about, and that is Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. This is the young readers / YA remix of a previous book also called Stamped by Ibram X. Kendi. So this is the remix done by Jason Reynolds. Next I have a graphic novel, and that is Are You Listening by Tilly Walden. I don't know a lot about this one, but it's an intimate, emotionally soaring story about friendship, grief, and healing. Okay, so that was my whole YA TBR, and now I'm gonna go through the single shelf I have of adult books. Okay, so first I have here is We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib, and this is a queer Muslim memoir. It's a nonfiction, so I'm interested to see how it goes. Next I have Becoming by Michelle Obama. I really, really do want to read this, so I'm hoping to listen to the audiobook. Next I have Catch and Kill, Lies, Spies, and a Conspiracy to Protect Predators, and this is by Ronan Farrow. I'm really interested to see how this one goes. It's a nonfiction read as well. Next I have Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham, From Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls and Everything in Between. I absolutely love Lauren Graham from Gilmore Girls. So I'm excited to hear more stories from that time in her life. Next, I have God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. This was the winner of the Booker Prize at one point. It's by a South Asian author as well. I was meant to read it for a class in university, but we never ended up getting around to it, so I do want to try and read it myself. Next, I have The Three Body Problem. This takes place during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. It is actually by a Chinese author, and it was translated into English. Next, I have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. All I know about this is that it involves a main character who is something called a dreamwalker. It is a fantasy, so I'm interested to see how it goes. Next, I have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have started this. I'm in the middle of it. I will eventually finish it. I will. Next, I have two books that my sister got me from India, and they are Ram, Scion of Ishvaku, and The Immortals of Malua, the first book in the Shiva trilogy. These are both inspired by Hindu mythology, so I'm really interested to see how they are. Next, I have the gift edition of The Princess Bride by William Goldman. I absolutely love this movie, so I really did want to read the book, so hopefully I get to this one day. Next, I have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I have heard nothing but good things about this. It is a high fantasy, and that is about all I know. It is told from the main character's perspective, and it doesn't take place over that much time, I believe. I'm not really sure, but yeah, all I hear is good things, so I hope I like it. Next, I have Circe by Madeline Miller. This follows the mythological figure from Greek mythology named Circe, who would turn men into pigs and just be an all-around badass bitch. So yeah. Next, I have two books by Tasha Suri. So I don't have one of them with me, but that is Empire of Sand. And then I have the other book in the series / a companion in the same world, and it's called Realm of Ash. They are South Asian fantasies inspired by the Mughal Empire, so I'm really interested to see how they are. Next, I have Queen of the Conquered by Kaysen Callender. This is a Caribbean-inspired fantasy. Next, I have the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and that is the 5th season. I've heard only good things about this, and it won multiple awards, and I think it's the first series to win like consecutive Hugo Awards for each book in the series. It is by a Black author as well, so I'm really interested to see how this goes. And then I also have an arc by N.K. Jemisin, and that's for a book coming out in March, and that is The City We Became. It is kind of like an urban fantasy, or like it takes place in modern day in New York City, I believe, but it also involves like fantasy elements and mythology. So I'm really interested to see how her take on New York City is gonna be. And with that, I have reached the end of my full physical TBR. I did get rid of quite a few books that I did own that I was intending to read, but I have reached a point where I know I'm not gonna read those books, so I've gotten rid of them. So these are all the ones that I really do hope I will get to sometime soon, within the next couple years, hopefully. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very long, and hopefully you saw some books that you're interested in. I tried to give a short little like blurb or like snapshot of each, so hopefully you got something out of this. This is really more for future Jananie to come back and be like, aha, you thought you could read all of those. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you did like it. I will see you in my next video, and please remember that the story ain't over. Bye!